corporate life to entrepreneurship, right now on The Leadership Voice. Welcome to The Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show features leaders transitioning from corporate life to entrepreneur life. Joining us today will be Shahira Marei, founder of The Dirty Cookie, and Nguyen X, founder and CEO of COSEMI Technologies. We also have a special leadership lesson being delivered by Dr. David Obstfeld. But let's start things off with today's quote of the day. Today's quote comes from Thomas Watson Sr., Chairman and CEO of IBM. To be successful, you have to have your heart in your business and your business in your heart. Our first guest today on The Leadership Voice is Shahira Marei. Shahira earned her BA and MBA from California State University, Fullerton. After graduation, she spent 6 years at Boeing as an aerospace project manager, before deciding to venture into the entrepreneurial world and start a brick-and-mortar cookie company called The Dirty Cookie. The Dirty Cookie is famous for making custom-branded cookies in the shape of a shot glass that can be filled with your favorite beverage to create amazing flavor and texture combinations. The business has evolved to capitalize on e-commerce and sells its cookies, cookie butter, and cookie dough truffles nationwide. Shahira is active in the community as a supporter of the Center for Leadership, Women Entrepreneurs, and Women Founders, and recently started a nonprofit to provide a forum and network for her working demographic called the League of Egyptian American Professionals. So please welcome Shahira Marei.
Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's great to have you on the show today. Maybe you could begin by telling us a little bit about your journey going from Boeing to The Dirty Cookie.
Yeah, so like you said, I was at Boeing for about 6 years, and what really inspired me was when I had my daughter. I was 26 years old, and I was working for Boeing for already about 3 years, and I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was really young, from a very young age. My father was a retired entrepreneur, and when I had my daughter, I felt like, okay, I have everything. I have an amazing corporate job. I have a kid now, but where is my business? It was missing for me. So I go back to Boeing and decide that I'm going to open up a storefront right here locally. And yeah, it just kind of happened.
That's great. So could you tell us a little bit more about The Dirty Cookie and how the concept evolved?
So The Dirty Cookie, we're known for our custom-branded cookie shot glasses. So I had my friend at Boeing make me custom molds that looked like like a shot glass. And after he made the molds, we tested it out to see if it would actually hold up a cookie, and it did. Then we sent off the samples to China, and then it worked. So 6 months later, our store was open.
Oh, that's amazing. And so how is The Dirty Cookie different from a lot of other companies that I mean, there's so many in the baking industry or in the cookie industry?
Yeah, so the fact that we make cookies in the shape of a shot glass and you can fill it with different beverages is kind of unique. Not a lot of people do that right now. And the fact that we have our own custom molds that we can scale, like we can make thousands. There's little mom and pop shops that are making like 1 or 2 at a time. Using like, by hand and stuff. We have these molds that we can make thousands in one day. So we have scalability. We can brand them with company logos. We theme them out for the holidays. We also do vegan gluten-free. So there isn't a vegan gluten-free cookie shot in the market right now.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
And my imagination is always that if you fill a cookie with liquid, it's going to just fall apart. But your cookies don't.
Yeah, we seal them with chocolate. So we use this really premium chocolate, and it seals around the cookie, and when it dries up, nothing can go through, so it doesn't leak.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so tell us, now that you've been an entrepreneur, how many years now with The Dirty Cookie?
About 4.5.
About 4.5 years,
Yeah.
so it's still a very young company. What is the biggest difference for you between working for a company and now being an entrepreneur and owning your own business?
So I would say freedom. When I was at Boeing, you were told exactly what you needed to do. You had a structure in place, you had a system you just had to follow, and you had to just do it well, right? But when you start your own business, you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, I was not a baker. I had no idea how to bake a cookie, first of all. And I didn't know how to run a shop, and I didn't know anything. So there was no system in place, and I had to start learning how to develop all these systems and actually to make it work, right?
And then you've always been a learner, though, and
always
a lifelong learner, and that's always been an important part of your development, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what was your biggest challenge that you faced at the Dirty Cookie?
The biggest challenge? The biggest challenge, I would say, was getting out there and actually telling people what a cookie shop was. A lot of people, I had people think it was a candle, right? Like, people didn't know what a cookie shop. It's education, consumer education. That was a really big challenge for me. Like, we had to do content, videos to explain how to do it. They didn't know how to eat it. Is it messy? How do we consume this? So, and I didn't get that till like a year later. I'm like, oh, people don't know what I'm doing, so I have to go educate them. Yeah,
because you've really created a whole different type of dessert experience.
Exactly. There wasn't anything like it on the market.
Yeah, which is good and bad.
Yes, exactly. Challenging.
So if you were to talk to a young entrepreneur, somebody said, I want to start my own company, I want to start my own business, what advice would you give a young entrepreneur that wanted to start their own thing?
Go ask or follow, shadow, mentor someone who's done it before, or ask for help. I wish I would have, before building out a store, at least have talked to a couple people that have done it before, given me some guidance, which falls under like relationship building. You know, networking, you hear it a lot, but it's really build relationships to really help you in the future. I think I was very sheltered, and I just like, oh, I'll figure it out. But it would have been so much easier to go ask someone who's already done it and talk to them, have a conversation. And now that I do that, I prevent a lot of mistakes from happening because I don't have the experience a lot of other people who've done it before do.
So you could have saved yourself
a lot of time and money, if I would have just went out earlier and talked to people who've been in the industry and know what they're doing.
No, that's great. I want to thank you for being on the show, and we're going to have you back here in just a few minutes when we do our Q&A panel.
Okay, awesome.
So thank you so much
for
being
Jay.
with us. It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from Entrepreneur.com. We bring you The Typical Entrepreneur. The typical entrepreneur is on average 40 years old. 95% have at least a bachelor's degree. Less than 1% come from extremely wealthy or extremely poor backgrounds. 75% have worked at other companies for more than 6 years. 52% are the first in their family to launch a business. And the typical entrepreneur is 3 times more likely to have rebelled as teenagers. So there you have the typical entrepreneur. It's now time for the Leadership Countdown. Today's Leadership Countdown comes from bplans.com. We bring you the 6 most common reasons why new businesses fail. Number 6, rapid growth and overexpansion. Number 5, poor financial management. Number 4, unprofitable business models. Number 3, not in touch with customers' needs. Number 2, lack of uniqueness and value. And the number 1 reason why businesses fail is leadership failure. Please stick around. We have Nguyen X in the studio. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We found here at Honda Center in the Anaheim Ducks that the Center for Leadership brings expertise in doing research, in doing training. The faculty that has come and given the training to our employees does all the research themselves. They're not pulling this information off the shelf. They're out there researching themselves, talking from firsthand experience, and it brings such a level of competency that we, again, don't find from other trainers that are on the market.
Well, simply put, is what really differentiates and distinguishes Fullerton and the Center for Leadership, really is your expertise. you guys are able to create customized content for our business based on true research.
The faculty from Cal State Fullerton, obviously they're professors of their field, they have deep knowledge in research, but also aside from the theory, they really bring in some practical examples and they bring in a lot of interactive activities.
The Bringing Learning to Work initiative is our way of meeting the needs of Orange County businesses and communities. When our clients ask the Center for Leadership to come to bring learning to work, the clients know that they're getting cutting-edge information, the latest thinking in the field, but they're also getting world-class training. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest is Dr. Nguyen X. Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen is the founder of COSEMI Technologies, Inc., a technology startup company based in Irvine, California in 2006. COSEMI was recognized among the fastest growing companies in Orange County, and in 2011, it was named one of the 500 fastest growing private companies in America by Inc. magazine. COSEMI manufactures high-speed photodiodes that are used in fiber optics communication. In 2017, COSEMI successfully sold its high-speed photodiode business to Broadcom to focus on its patented hybrid active optical cables technology. Prior to starting COSEMI Technologies, Dr. Nguyen had worked as a technologist in corporate America for over 10 years at HRL Laboratories, Skyworks, and Global Communications Semiconductors, where he was recognized as HRL's Distinguished Inventor in 2008. Dr. Nguyen has over 25 peer-reviewed publications and has been awarded 15 patents. Dr. Nguyen came to America in November of 1981 as a political refugee. He spent 10 years at UCSB, where he earned his PhD in electrical and computer engineering. So it is with great pleasure, please welcome Dr. Nguyen Nguyen.
Thanks, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, and our audience is dying to know. Please tell us more about your career trajectory and how you eventually came to start COSEMI.
Yeah, sure. So, as I said in your introduction, I came to America in 1981, and I went to high school and then college, and then earning my PhD. After my PhD, then I went to work in corporate America for 10 years, and then after that, I decided to start COSEMI. This is starting a company.
And how did you know you were ready?
Well, so first, being in America, one of the greatest thing is to have a chance to start something that you believe in, right? Mm-hmm. And after years of working in corporate America, where I built up my connection and getting to know people and see what's the value you can bring to the industry, I feel that I was ready to take the plunge and really doing something that I believe in.
So when you were working for companies, was there always a part of you that wanted to start your own company? Or was it something that developed later?
It takes over time. In the beginning, when you first get out of school, the first thing you do is try to do as good as you can. And then when you succeed in doing that, then you're trying to, go to the next step and find out, what further limit can you do, right?
And so in your case, you were mostly focusing on the work, focusing on the company, just trying to do well by each company.
Right.
And so when did you say, I think I'm ready?
I think it's almost like in a sense when it's a point when it comes like you feel it's just compelling. You feel that this is what you want to do, right? And it is that from the inside, right? You know that's what you need to do.
Right.
You need to do.
So it starts off as like a little niggle or a little whisper, and after a while it starts shouting at you, and it says, it's time.
Exactly. Yep.
No, that's great. So tell us more about COSEMI Technologies. A lot of folks may not be familiar with it, may not know exactly what it does. Tell us about it.
So when I started, as a technologist, you work on different technology, right? And when you start looking to do, okay, what's the next big thing to do, right? And you look at it, okay, what's out there? And and the challenging thing with high-tech industry is that you have to do something that in the future, and yet your solution will be needed, right? So one of the things I was looking at was that, okay, I was working on wireless for cell phone industry, and I said, what's the next thing? There's all this device, high resolution. So how can it be connected? And then right now, the solution that the traditional copper connection does not provide enough resolution. So what if we can bring that fiber optic, where it was traditionally used for telecom, to the consumer application in-house for 4K TV, 8K TV, and that's what the value proposition that COSEMI bring to the industry.
And so it sounds like one of the real success factors for COSEMI was that you were good at anticipating where the needs were going to be.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, if you want to do a high-tech startup, that's what you have to do, right? You have to anticipate what is the coming need, and then you can your company value can provide a solution to the industry. That's very important.
Yeah, and so the technology sometimes ends up driving the demand. It's not always the other way around.
Yes, that is it's always in the industry we always call it chicken and eggs problem. Which come first? Sometimes you have a solution and people need it. Another time that hey, there's a need and then you have to provide a solution. So that's the interesting challenge for as any technologist want to do a startup. Where's the timing and how do you pace it right? Because if you start too early, then you miss the even though you have a solution, but you might miss the timeline. And when if you start too late, by the time you come out, there's 10 other people.
Someone else has done it already.
Exactly. Right.
So a lot of people would look at the success that COSEMI has had, and they'll just assume it was all just perfect, everything worked out so well every step of the way. But there really are challenges along the way. Could you talk about maybe what was the biggest challenge that COSEMI faced during the early years?
I think this is, yes, I think in general, as with any startup, one of the toughest challenge is to make decisions when you have incomplete information. And everywhere along the way, right? All right, should you do this? Should you bring in more people? Should you match your money? Should you deal with this IP development? Or that? Those are at every juncture, right? That in a startup, like you said. Looking back, it's always easy. Yeah, everything seemed like that was the only way that seemed to be, right? But however, when you're going along the way and you have to make the decision based on incomplete information, that's always a challenge.
And so after you make decisions, do you usually charge straight ahead after that decision? Or do you make a decision and find yourself thinking, oh, was that the right one or not? Or, oh, maybe I should rethink that.
That's a great question. That's one of the hardest problems with being a startup, right? Is that you're supposed to have conviction, commitment, but then you also have to leave room so that if something you are wrong, then you can recuperate because you only have one chance. You cannot. There's no opportunity to fail, right? So that's a most challenging thing to do. Okay,
so if you were to talk to a young entrepreneur, somebody that wanted to start a company, it could be in the technology industry or it could be in other industries, and they said, Dr. Nguyen, what advice would you have for me if I wanted to start my own business? What would you tell them?
I would say first thing to do is listen. If you know what you want to do, you want to listen from people, from experts, find mentors if you can. If not, study, do your homework. And then after all of that, when you feel that, hey, you have as much information as you can, then the most important thing is to be decisive and make the decision, right? To take the plunge. Because it doesn't matter how much you prepare, it's never enough. So when you take the plunge and then you learn on the fly and you deal with issues, that's really the hallmark of an entrepreneur, I would say.
So preparation meets opportunity, exactly. And everyone will think you're lucky.
Right, exactly. When you're successful, everything sounds very smooth, but along the way, everyone you talk to, anyone who's start a company as an entrepreneur, there's sleepless night that the main thing is you don't know what is the next challenge. Right?
Oh, great. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show, and we're going to have you back here in just a moment so that we can do Q&A. We have a panel with you and Shahira. We'll take questions from the audience. It's now time for today's leadership lesson. Today's leadership lesson will be delivered by Dr. David Obstfeld. So let's take 3 minutes and learn about entrepreneurship.
Hi, I'm David Obstfeld, and here is today's leadership lesson. In my previous talk, you have sized up your current work situation, identified a creative project that you think could be a startup and that would justify leaving your current position. But wait, it's time to take stock of the uncertainty the creative project entails. your work life to date is probably more or less defined by predictable routines. I'm not saying that there wasn't any uncertainty, but what I am saying is that when surprises happened, your main objective was probably to avoid disruption and to get work back on track. Now you are adopting a creative project with a goal, but a goal with a very unique set of properties that motivate and guide you. First and foremost, your goal by definition is sufficiently aligned with your interests to motivate you to leave your current position and sufficiently concrete to focus your attention. But it still has a goal that's not fixed. It will change as you begin to pursue it. The new uncertainty you're embracing then is one of goals, knowledge, collaboration, and communication. What does all that mean? Well, let's take about 4 kinds of uncertainty as they confront the marketing manager in that example I mentioned earlier, Yasmin, who's going to leave her company to start a mobile app called Walk the Dog that links busy dog owners on the one hand with high school kids with enough time to walk those dogs. Where's the uncertainty come from? Well, uncertainty 1 involves uncertain goals. Your goal will change as you approach your destination. What is possible will change as the technology, your customers, and the interest of your investors impose their will. Yasmin starts her company with the idea of a mobile app for dog walking, but finds that not only high school students are available, but all kinds of people are available to walk dogs. She has to make adjustments to reach that new audience. A second uncertainty involves new knowledge and learning. Your knowledge will surely evolve. Say goodbye to mastery and expertise, as we talked about previously, of your past position, and say hello to being a novice and an explorer and a curiosity-guided seeker. When you leave your previous job, you may also exit your place of power and perhaps your knowledge about a field and how to get things done. Your knowledge will also evolve at a faster pace than ever before. One facet of that is that you will be asking a lot of questions and feeling like an idiot more than you realized. Yasmin has to learn about web design and programming and the costs associated with a startup in order to understand how to get her app up and running. Then there's uncertainty number 3, which involves your social network. Who you need to meet and how you will engage with them will be far, far from obvious. You will need to be social in a new way than ever before, putting yourself out to people in unfamiliar events and meetings over coffee. For many of you, you will need to be more social to a surprising extent, meeting new people who have access to the resources and knowledge that you need to make things happen. Yasmin has to go to different meetups to meet and talk to web designers and investors, something she didn't have to do in her previous corporate job. Perhaps even more importantly, you know you have to play a game of 3s by which you are in the middle, weaving combinations of people together and even communities together to move things forward. Yasmin introduces her lead programmer and partner on the one hand to a potential new investor on the other. Sometimes life to Yasmin seems like a continual flow of these introductions and combinations of people, a game of 3s that involves the necessity of bringing people together to see what can be created. And then there's uncertainty number 4, which is this idea that there's constant translation involved. In the creative project, there is no official language. You must constantly be multilingual. You talk fast, too fast, or get inscrutable and at your peril. You cannot get lost in translation. You need to be establishing understanding, and after understanding, interest in your project. Yasmin has to constantly translate to programmers who she needs to build the website, and to investors who she needs to assess the financial fitness of her startup. And of course, she needs to be multilingual to bring worlds like programmers and investors together. So if your answer to the question from my previous talk is that you have a creative project and you may want to get started, now take stock of all the uncertainty involved. And remember, alongside all that uncertainty is adventure, true transformation, and new possibilities. If it's the right creative project, you are on your way. I'm David Obstfeld, and this has been your Leadership Lesson.
Thank you, Professor Obstfeld, for today's leadership lesson. It's now time for the Leadership Voices Q&A. Viewers, do you need some leadership advice? Well, you've come to the right place. Every show we take questions from you, our viewers, and we answer them right here on the show. Today we have 4 questions for our guests, so let's get to today's questions. Our first one is for Shahira, and it is from Senna in Orange Park Acres. She asks, what have you learned about owning a business that you were not prepared for when you started out?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say you're never really ready for the journey or the ups and downs and the highs and lows. And it's like having a baby. Everybody tells you it's really hard till you have that baby, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. And you just have to go through it to really get it.
And what did you do to get through it?
What did I do? Oh my gosh, asking people for help, going out there, reading a lot of books, just learning from others was a big part of it. Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Nguyen?
Yeah, so I think I very much agree with Shahira on the answer, but also I would say, I would add to that one of the things is that, when you're doing your own business, the work never stops. When you go to work for a company, it's 8 to 5 and you're done. But when you're doing your own business, it's continuing on and on. So that's the biggest differentiation, right? You take a break, you come back, the work will be there waiting for you.
Yeah. I guess I would imagine that even at 11 o'clock at night, if you're thinking about your business, as a CEO, as a founder, you are working.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to do that. You should do that, right? That's why you have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, it's very, very tiring, right?
Yeah, there's no more punching the clock.
That's right.
When you become the owner. No, that's great. So our second question will be for Nguyen, and it comes from Sam in Los Angeles, California. Sam asks, what is the best book you've read lately, and what did it teach you?
So one of the best books I read, and that's it's actually remind me a lot of things, is The Miracle of Mindfulness. And the reason is by this one of the monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, that's a Vietnamese American monk. But one of the great things about it is that it's remind you to be aware of what you're doing and your environment and everything, right? And that sometimes you're in a stressful life of being an entrepreneur in the US, when you step back and remind you, oh, hey, this is what you're doing and this is where you are, then it gives you a different perspective to life.
Okay, it sounds like a great book.
Yeah, for me, Start With Why by Simon Sinek was an amazing book. Before you do anything like business in your life, you need to have a purpose, a mission. Why? Why am I doing this? Why did I start this business? Like, you have to have a personal mission statement as well as in your business. So that was a really big, eye-opening book for me.
Okay, terrific. Thank you both for sharing books of interest. I'm sure our viewers will take a look and learn from those. Our third question is for Shahira, and it comes from Rhett in Ontario, California. Rhett asks, every CEO or owner has worries that weigh on their mind. So, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, man. We have so much work to do and not enough time. So I think that's the biggest thing that keeps me up at night. It's like I'm always thinking of what I have to do next and all the things that need to get done. And because we're a small startup, we're limited resource constraints. So I'm like, how are we going to get all this done? So, and priority becomes a big part of it, just prioritizing, but really just thinking about them all night, like he said earlier. We're always just thinking about what needs to get done.
Okay.
Yeah, that keeps me up.
All right, so the workload and the tasks and the priorities and the deadlines.
Exactly.
Nguyen?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think as a startup, by definition, you're under-resourced. You never have enough resource. You never have enough people. You never have enough money. You never have enough time.
Exactly.
It's all of those things, right? But in addition, because as a high-tech entrepreneur, one of the other things we have to worry constantly is who is the unknown competitor that may come up and swoop you, and you're getting designed out because something else. So that's that's well written in by Henry Grove's books. Only the paranoid survive, so we have to always be on the lookout. Who's gonna take your lunch, so to say?
So at any time, some other tech company or a new startup could come out with something that does something a little better or a little newer.
Well, I mean, the competition, first of all, as a startup, you have the existing competitors, so those are well known. But there's other that maybe you have an idea, someone else maybe also have a similar idea or better idea, and that come up and compete you and design you out, right? So that's always an unknown that you was always wondering, could that be possible? Could not be, and then how do you deal with it if that come about?
So how do you fight the unknown competitor.
Right. Well,
or unknown
Yeah.
today.
Right, and well, that's why the best way is always constantly listening, studying, and then read. And in this day and age, there's a lot of source of information. Right, sometimes you actually get overflow of information. How do you filter out the right information is pretty important.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. So our fourth question comes back to Nguyen, and it comes from Carlos in Fallbrook, California. Who was your biggest mentor, and what role did they have in your life and career?
That's a great question, Jay. I mean, as when I started the path toward entrepreneur, I also was trying to look for a mentor, but being a Vietnamese American and being in the high-tech industry, which is working a lot with a lot of established company, there's no real mentor. I mean, that can fit one person can have all the similar experience. So what I had to do was basically work through and learn from a lot of friend mentors, so different people, different fellow entrepreneur, and then overall they steer me in the right direction.
So you actually had many people in your life that would add pieces of knowledge or pieces of wisdom that you needed.
Exactly, right? So for example, let's say when you do a business, it's not just the technology, it's also the accounting, it's the legal, IP enforcement. These are different aspects of the business. And if you have a friend who's doing a lawyer, they will advise you certain things, right? And then accounting, there's certain things to watch out for, right? And these are things that together make a business. It's not just one. It's not like you just make a product, therefore that product become a business, right?
Okay, perfect. Shahira?
So for me, it was my dad. From a very young age, he was an entrepreneur, like I mentioned earlier, but he said 2 life-changing sentences to me when I was really young, like 10 or 12. He said, if you want to help people, you must give them jobs, not money, because I was always a helper. I wanted to give people money to help them out back in Egypt. And he's like, you need to provide them with jobs, not money. And then he said, you need to also, what did he say? I'm trying to remember off the top. He said something like, you need to figure this out by the age of 30. Like if you're gonna have a business, figure it out by the age of 30, which put so much pressure on me to figure out my business journey when I had my daughter at 26. So it was unintentional from his side, but it kind of like drove me to be this super focused on I'm going to have a business before the age of 30 goal, which is not true, by the way. It doesn't need to happen that way. But those were the 2 sentences, I think, that shaped me into getting ready for entrepreneurship.
Okay, terrific. So some great mentor stories.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you both for being on the show and helping us answer questions from our audience. This has been the Leadership Voices Q&A. If you have a question or need advice, send us your questions here to the Leadership Voice by email, leadershipvoice@fullerton.edu, or by Twitter @CSUF_leadership. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today's show. Today we talked about the transition from corporate to entrepreneurial life. Thank you to our guests, Shahira and Nguyen, for joining us, and special thanks to Professor Obstfeld for delivering today's leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice as we feature fresh and relevant topics that can help you become a great leader. I'm Jay Barbuto, and on behalf of the Center for Leadership at California State University, Fullerton, we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.